Hello, good evening and welcome to PM Express. And as you know, today is Corporate Wednesday. It's the Ghanaian dream to live in one's own house, whether self-built, bought or built on request. Most Ghanaians die without fulfilling that dream. The current annual estimated national housing need is 70,000 units, and there is a reported backlog of 250,000 units. Approximately 60% of the current annual housing needs remains unsatisfied. A housing shortage, some 41,000 units, is created annually, excluding the backlog. Approximately 92% of the housing units needed consist of the low to medium income housing. Unfortunately, the real estate developers enjoying incentive packages, including tax benefits provided by government, produce homes which are well beyond the means of those most in need of assistance. And that is where my guest in the studio comes in. Despite springing up of various banks with mortgage facilities, HFC remains the leading mortgage provider in the country. The bank has over 30% share of the mortgage industry. And I want to take a look at how best we can solve Ghana's housing deficit. And we will be chatting with Charles Bonsu, the General Manager, Mortgages and Consumer Loans for HFC Bank. Now you can send your comments to our Facebook page because I know as far as housing is concerned, we are all in that street. Well, the majority of us. So come to our Facebook page, which is a Joy News channel, or send your messages to short code 1760. I'll pass them over to Charles and he will explain to us. So right after the break, we are going to find shelter. Stay tuned. Hello, and the topic is solving the housing deficit in Ghana. And that, I know it's in most homes, especially if you're renting or you're looking for a place to rent. I mean, it's very hard to even find people trying to get on the property ladder because it seems so far-fetched. It's like, forget about buying, just find one, rent it, and stay in it. But for all you know, the amount you're paying in rent could be the amount you could be used in buying the house. Now, to talk about this issue, with me in the studio is Mr. Charles Bonsu, General Manager in charge or responsible for mortgages and consumer loans at HFC Bank. Charles, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now, this topic, sometimes I get very selfish, especially when the topic is very dear to my heart, you know. So I hope that everything that bothers me will be bothering you. So as I ask my questions, you will be taking as well. Charles, but first of all, I mean, so HFC, so purely just mortgages?
Oh, no, Nana. HFC started business in somewhere 1991 as a home finance company. In those days, all that we did was mortgages, providing home loans. And then somewhere in 1995, we were listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. The following year, we placed and issued corporate bond on the stock market. And in fact, we are the only private company that has listed a bond on the market, which is still on the market. Then in 2003, we received a universal banking license. So we became a universal bank, became HFC Bank. In fact,
so I can come from just a general loan, not necessarily for...
No. So at this moment, we are the most diversified financial institution in the country and also the leading home loan provider. In addition to mortgage banking, we do commercial banking, do investment banking. We also have a subsidiary that is into real estate. We also have a Boafo, we do microfinance, a subsidiary in microfinance, and then also a subsidiary in joint capital venture programs. So we are now a diversified, in fact, the most diversified financial institution in the country.
But specialty is mortgages?
Well, we have the core competence in mortgages. I mean, there is no institution in Ghana that is as good as HFC when it comes to mortgages. So as far as mortgages are concerned, we have very core competencies in it, and we are the best.
Charles, the issue of housing in Ghana, I mean, and I don't know, maybe you being in the industry, you can help, but I mean, I've seen flats build up, you know, along the Independence Avenue, is that what it's called? The main road around the airport. And the price tag on it. You know, even if you had that money and you can make the notes waterproof, you can make a house out of it, you know, and live in it. But those are not the houses that the average Joe can afford.
That is true. That is true. But you see, you know, when we started, you talked about the deficits. You know, the deficit for those in the high income bracket, you know, those kind of houses you see out there, they can take care of themselves.
Yeah.
You know, the problems and the difficulties and the deficits are in the low to the middle income.
Sure.
And that is where our problems are.
Now, what I'm trying to find out is, you know, why are people building 700,000, 500,000 flats instead of 60,000, 30,000 two-bedroom apartments? I mean,
I'm not a developer, but what they will tell you is that, you know, they are there to make money. They are business people who need to make money. See, the margins on a two-bedroom is very small.
Actually.
So they rather prefer building maybe 20 of the $500,000 houses.
Probably for the same amount of money they will use to build a two-bedroom.
Thank you. So that brings us the role of government in trying to resolve and solve these affordable issues and the housing deficits. That those in the lower to middle income bracket, government has to play a leading role instead of being a bystander.
Some enforcement or some capital injection.
Policies, subsidies, you know, creating and helping the development of a bond market in the country, you know, making sure that interest rates are lower. You know, so government policies has to be really made towards helping those in the lower and middle income bracket. For instance, there's currently lack of long-term funds. You know, long-term funds are normally cheaper. You can't get them in Ghana. And as a result, interest rates are higher. In addition, income levels are also quite low, you know, in a country. And then there is insufficient supply of affordable houses. You look at all this, coupled with the difficulties in land registration, titling, you realize that these are the main issues. And I believe that if government, you know, forcefully comes out with a good housing policy, because currently we don't have one, addressing all of these issues,
we could start
trying to resolve some of these issues that are currently on the ground. But I must add that in spite of that, HFC Bank, we have a program with Ghana government. This program started about 4 years ago, where we provide government sector employees a loan of up to 40,000 Ghana cedis. There is no down payment. The interest rate is tied to the 91-day treasury bill, but with a maximum of 15% and a floor of 10%. So in other words, it will not be less than 10% and it will not be more than 15% in any period.
Over what? Over how long?
For a maximum of 20 years.
Okay.
So what we've been doing is that we've been working with some developers who are willing to provide two-bedroom, decent houses.
At 40,000?
At 40, 45,000.
So if you have a deposit to just cover
if it's 45,000, you have a deposit of 5,000, you know, cover. If it is 40,000, then you don't need any deposit. And we've been able to help a lot of public sector employees, currently about almost 350.
Would that be too inferior? 40,000 two-bedroom house, would it be too inferior, or you can?
No, it will not be too inferior. I mean, they are decent two bedrooms, very decent. I mean, they they have everything. The difference is that instead of having the road that is tarred, like, but you have one that is accessible, but it's decent 2-bedroom. You have your 2 bedrooms, you have
but that's for only government employees or civil servants?
Yes, but because for them, the program is such that we can give them 40,000 Ghana cedis, and then there is no down payment, and the interest rates are very low. And if you're a government employee making about 200 cedis a month, you'll be able to qualify for this program. Which is a fantastic program.
Well, you have to say that again, because I'm sure there are government employees out there who we know. So if you earn about 200 cedis...
Now about 200 cedis and a month, you'll be able to qualify for this program.
And what number should they call for
get to any HFC branch. We have about 29 branches across the country. We are in almost every region, district.
Because it sounds too good to be true. That's why.
People are enjoying it. I might say that majority of the people enjoying it are teachers.
I see.
Those in the and then followed by those in the health sector. We have security personnel also on it.
Anyway, Charles, there are only 600,000, government workers. So the rest of the 24 million of us also need houses.
But you see, the difference is that you must admit that their salaries are quite low.
Quite low.
Lower.
I know.
Good.
I know. So now I'm going to talk about the guy who is probably 35.
Mm-hmm.
He's not working for the government. He's, works for maybe multimedia. He works here. And earns maybe 2,000 cedis a month. He wants to get a house. So he walks into the bank. What are his requirements? What do you need from him? What should he produce to even start the process going?
It's simple. In fact, if you're making 2,000 cedis a month, you can qualify for a mortgage. All that we will need from such a person is one, that his pay salary, his salary slip, evidence that he works here and this is how much he makes. Then, if you have identified the property, mm-hmm. you need to have what we call an offer letter or a contract from the developer or whoever is selling the property, saying that I'm selling this property to you, these are the features of the property, this is how much it costs. If this guy who makes 2,000 Ghana cedi a month, we have programs or products that he can qualify for. If you make up to about 4,000, 5,000, I think 6,000 Ghana cedi net income, you could qualify for a house that is up to about $65,000.
Okay, so
and no, $65,000. Yeah, about 120, a maximum of 120. But for such income brackets, most of the time they qualify for 60, 70, 80,000 Ghana cedis. One, if you're in that income bracket, you might not have to make a down payment.
Okay.
If you have to make a down payment, it will require a minimum of 20% down payment.
Of the value of the house.
Of the value of the house. The rest, we spread it, a 35-year-old person will spread it for 20 years.
What will make two employees come? What will make one have to pay the 20% and the other nothing? Or can they deposit to say, look, I really don't have 20% and I can do 10%. Can I negotiate?
Yes. The difference, in fact, for both of them, if you look on their pay slips, it looks they all qualify. But the difference is that some people have other obligations.
Okay.
So the income they make, there's a lot of it that is going out to pay other things.
Maybe a car loan.
So you end up with a net income that is smaller or that income that is bigger.
What if they don't disclose that they have a car loan? I mean, how do you...
Well, we have an XDS data bureau who provide us credit history.
Also, they will find out that this guy is borrowed from here. But okay.
And it's not good. It's not advisable when you have obligations that you don't declare. If you declare, then we'll be able to help you and try to really steer you towards the right product.
Okay. Okay. So based on the obligations, one could pay a deposit and the other cannot
Can-
pay
can-
the bill.
yes.
Now, how long should I be employed for to qualify?
Well, we normally say that because this is a long-term loan, it's a, the kind of investment that it's somewhere from 10 to 20 years. We expect that at least you must be in permanent employment for at least a minimum of 3 years. Because we need to see that you are stable in the job place, you don't move from place to place. So for a minimum of 3 years, if you have been working, is good, and we will be able to look at your request.
So less than 3 years, you won't look at it?
No, we'll look at it. We'll look at it. But you might qualify for less.
Okay.
We'll look at it, even for 1 year. But the whole idea of a long-term, because you're going to have a long-term loan that is going to take you about 20 years.
Yes.
You want to make sure that
You're quite
you are
stable,
working.
have a
Stable.
good track record.
Good track record, you're working. And it doesn't only have to be your salary or income from one job. Some people have farms, they are running taxis. So you put all the incomes together. Now, if you're also married, there's an advantage, because then you and your wife, when you put your incomes together, it becomes bigger. Therefore, you qualify for a bigger loan, which can also help you get a bigger house.
Okay, so then I get my letter, I've come to the bank, and then you then do all the searches and everything to make sure.
Correct. We do all the searches. Once you give us all the information we are looking for, all the documents, you give us about 5 working days. We'll give you a letter telling you that either we have approved, or there's a reason why you need to bring some additional documents. So once we approve of it, there are certain requirements that you need to meet. One, you need to, there's a government 1% stamp duty fee, which you have to pay. There are little fees, search fee you need to pay, because we need to search the land registry.
Who provides the solicitor? I do, or do you?
We do.
You do?
We do. We do. So for those little fees we charge you, we
pay the
we engage lawyers to do some of the documentations and things, for you, to make sure that the property that you have purchased, if your name appears on the legal documents, and that it is registered. So we do all that for you.
This is just curiosity. What if I buy the house, but I don't live in it, and I rent it out, and then live somewhere? So maybe my mortgage is maybe, let's say, 1,000 cedis a month, and I rent the house for 1,500 or maybe even 2,000, depending on the market. And you find out that Nana's not living in the house; he's rented it out.
We don't have any problem with that.
So I don't even have to disclose it.
It's nice to disclose just for information purposes.
That I'm renting it out.
No, that maybe
it's a buy-to-let property.
You want to rent it out. Maybe if we have an advice, we can give you. But for us, it's not an issue.
Will it affect the interest you give me?
No, it will not. It will not. However, if the payments, if your repayments are coming from the rent, we look at it differently.
Okay.
Instead of the payments coming from your salary. You get it?
But before I rent the house, the repayment will be coming from my wages, because I declare my wages.
Correct.
However, if I have a tenant, well, I mean, I'm sure you're not going to, this note does not come from you. That's the tenant's note, so.
No, it only occurs where, let's say, you are coming from another property, and that you want a bigger property. Your income maybe qualifies you for 60,000, but you want a property. You already have a
60,000.
Right, but you want a property of 100 or 200,000. So you want to add the rental income. Yes. What we'll do is that we'll discount the rental income. Okay, because we have to look at the tenant. If you are renting it to,
corporation?
No problem. But if you are renting it to Joe Blow, how long will Joe Blow be staying there? If it is for 3 years, after 3 years, what happens?
What happens?
Because this property, you are taking a mortgage for about 20 years. So we'll discount it and then, add part of it to the income and then, try and do an appraisal.
And then sort of adjust it.
And then adjust it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned 20 years, and there are some people who have, less than 20 years in their working career.
Correct.
And they might also want to get on the property later, however late. So are there provisions for somebody like that?
Well, what we do is we qualify you based on your income and age.
Okay.
And the idea is that, in Ghana, the retirement age is 60 years. Of course, in the judiciary, it's 70, 75. So we don't want you to be making monthly mortgage payments after 60 years. So if you are in formal employment...
60 not too low. I mean, nowadays 60...
But this is only for those in the formal employment.
Formal employment.
Okay. Because
then you'll be checking you out.
Correct. After 60 years, So if you are 50 years and you are formal employment, we'll give you 10 years. Okay. But if you run your own business, that is different. You can go beyond 65, 60 years. You can go beyond 65, 70. If you are into professions such as law, the lawyers practice till they fall down.
Till their kingdom come.
Yeah,
okay.
So there are certain professions, and those who run their own businesses, though they go beyond 60 years.
How about location?
Location, for us, the property has to be within 40 to 45 kilometers radius of a district capital or a capital city.
Okay.
So we can look at almost everywhere in Ghana.
Near Tamale, near Kumasi.
All those places. And we have customers in the north, in Techiman, all those places.
45 kilometers within the district.
Within the district
Any
capital.
particular reason? Because, somebody could be 50.
Okay. Because, the property, as much as is a social thing, you also have to look at the value, the economic value of it.
The further you go, the less the value.
If you go to a place closer to my village where there's no economic activity and something happens, one, the value of the property goes down and it becomes difficult even to get somebody to buy.
That's when after we process it, it becomes
difficult. And even for you, the house owner yourself, you might not even get anybody to rent it because there's no economic activity in that neighborhood. You might not live there. You might be living in Accra, So it becomes a burden, and therefore the value, instead of value going up, we end up with a situation where the value is going down.
Actually, once you mentioned value going up, so I buy a property from you, my two guys came in and bought a property from you. Mm-hmm. And maybe, say, 5-6 years down the line, they bought the house at 60,000. Mm-hmm. And now that everything is going up, imagine the house doubles, so it's now 120,000. Mm-hmm. Can they come back to you and say, look, give me 20,000, out of this house because I'm going to go and do farming?
In fact, they might get more than 20,000 because what we do is that we look at the for sale value, which might be about 75 or 80% of that amount. And if you qualify for that, the difference, which is about 80,000, mm-hmm. we can give it to you, and we call that home equity.
Yeah.
Because you are taking
money
equity
out of the house.
That property. Now, the law requires you that money should be used in real estate.
Oh, really?
Either two ways. Either you can use it to buy a new house, build, do improvements, and that kind of stuff. If you want a long term. However, if you want to use it for business, Then HFC, another division, the commercial part, will also be able to give it to you. But then that will be short term.
But that won't be equity from the house.
It will still be equity. I mean, although you don't call it equity, but it's purely a loan.
No, I want to go on a honeymoon.
It doesn't matter. It's purely a loan. Equity is a loan.
Yeah.
The difference is that if you are taking it under the home loans law, then we consider that as a mortgage, and we can give it to you for 15 years.
Okay.
But if you are using it for honeymoon, that one I'm not going to give it to you for 15 years.
But that time the honeymoon will be well over.
So that one I'll give it to you for about 5 years, you know.
And then you have to come back and pay.
You have to come back and pay. If it's for business, those kind of things, yeah, you know, that is short. But if it's really for real estate, then we can give it to you for 15 years.
Okay, I'll take a quick break from here, but post your question, you know, if you have any other questions, post them on Facebook. Look for Joy News TV. Post your questions there, and I'll put it to Charles, and he'll answer them. But by the end of the show, we should have bought a house somehow. We are trying to solve a housing deficit solution by some magic wand. But it sounds so good to be through. And, you know, from some of the figures that Charles are throwing out, it means that, you know, there are some people out there paying rent, and those rents could be, you know, your mortgage repayment. You know, you could have gone to the bank, and instead of giving that money to the landlord, you give it to Charles, and at the end of the 20-year period, you know, it's your house. And maybe you bought it at 60,000, but in 20 years' time, the same house will probably be worth 200,000. But Charles, I want some realistic figures, because you're making it sound too good to be true. But you know, the perceived idea is that, you know, houses are expensive and don't go near it. Just find one to rent, pay your 2-year deposit, you know, pay your monthly rent, and just, you know, be done with it.
Okay, now let me give you examples of two individuals. Somebody who works in the public sector, you know, a civil servant, a teacher, you know, a nurse. He's entitled to 40,000 Ghana cedis, which he could get a 2-bedroom property, a decent one at that price. We don't require any down payment from him or her. If he or she should go a little further above and take about 45, it means that you have to pay a deposit of 5,000 Ghana cedis. Now, for such a person, the interest rate now is about 15%.
Over the period?
Over the period. Well, for them, 15% is the highest you will pay. Over the period, if the TV rate comes down below 15%, you will pay that rate.
So that would be between 10 and 15%.
Now, such a person, when he takes 40,000, and his income is about 200, 300, in the first few years, he will only pay a maximum of 35% of his income.
So that's like 70 Ghana cedis.
Between 70 to 150 Ghana cedis. Okay. Which is either the same or a little bit more, less than a rent. So that is for the public sector.
So because normally, you know, your landlord would have charged you about 2 years advance. And you're saying don't pay that 2-year advance if you work out the mortgage, and then you can just basically spread it.
Yes, you can use that 2-year advance as a down payment to reduce
your monthly installments.
And every month, what you pay, anywhere between 70 to 150 Ghana cedis, should be sufficient for you to pay for the next 20 years. Then the other person who works, you know, in a private sector, makes good money, earning anywhere from 1,200 Ghana cedi to 3,000. If he takes a CD loan, about 68,000 Ghana cedi, the standard requirement is a minimum of 20%, which will be 12,000 Ghana cedi. So we'll be left with 48,000 Ghana cedi as a loan. Every month, for such a person, if he's making an income of about 1,250, that means every month he'll be paying about 430 Ghana cedis a month.
But then the issue will be raising that 12,000, isn't it?
The issue
Because
is
if you're not
raising-
careful, you go
Good.
and borrow.
Good. So we have a product that we call collateral replacement indemnity. That person could still take the 60,000 without a down payment or very little down payment. But then his monthly payment will
Go
be
up.
higher.
So if you add that 12,000 to it, probably what, 600-ish?
Yes, about 600 Ghana cedis. We can use that also for those who take dollar mortgages. Currently, we are able to give both cedi and dollar mortgages. But we give dollar mortgages mainly for non-resident Ghanaians in the diaspora.
Okay.
However, I know there are some Ghanaians, like Nana, you and some Ghanaians who might be earning dollars. We can give you dollar loan.
If you can prove your dollar income.
You have a
Okay.
dollar account. Other than that, for most Ghanaians, it is cedi based, so you give cedi income. So for those who are earning the dollars, both here and the diaspora, anywhere, if you earn up to $4,000, you can also qualify for this product, where you can take anywhere up to $60,000 to $80,000 home without a down payment, and your interest will be based on the loan amount.
Talking about the diaspora, I mean, because normally people in the diaspora would have bought a land and don't have the necessary maybe 20, 30,000 to put the house on it. So, can they come to you to get a mortgage to sort of build the house, or how
we do that not only for those in the diaspora, any Ghanaian or Ghanaians. What we normally advise is that you start, when you reach the lantern level, then we can come in to help you to complete it.
Oh.
The key thing is that your land must be registered. Okay. And normally, to avoid that kind of problem, we always advise, look, why don't you see a developer whose documents are correct, and who also we will do a search to confirm that the documents are right, so that you can easily take a mortgage, and then you move in, and then you
stop
start
all the headache.
The headache, with all these legal tussles, with land documentations and things like that, you can avoid all that.
What's the average process of buying? 3 months, 2 months? From me seeing to walking to
all
searches.
depends on the developer. In Ghana at the moment, developers take anywhere from 6 months to 1.5 years to deliver a house.
No, I'm talking about, I've seen a house. It's delivered.
Okay.
The delivery
ready.
is ready.
It's ready.
And he's giving me the letter.
Okay.
So I come to the bank and say, look, I want to go and buy this house.
Yes, within 5 days, if you are in the formal sector, because in the formal sector is not a big deal, we'll give you a facility letter. A facility letter telling you that we have approved of your loan, and these are the things you need to do. 1, you need to take insurance. We have 2 types of insurance. A mortgage insurance, which is a mortgage protection for disability and then death. You also have to take...
Not unemployment.
Not employment. No insurance company in Ghana gives that. Yeah. Then you also take insurance, hazard insurance on the property in case there's fire and those kind of things. So those are things you need to do. If your property is, I think, less than 100,000, the insurance companies don't require you to do any medical exam. You just go through the motions and then get it done. That's 1. 2, you need to make certain closing costs, certain payments we call closing costs. For instance, you pay stamp duty on the mortgage.
Which is 1%.
It is 1%.
Okay.
There's a valuation that you pay because we have to value the house to make sure that
you're getting a fair deal.
What the developer or whoever is selling the property says it is worth is what it is worth. We'll do a title search. We'll search at the land registry to make sure that whoever is selling the property really owns the property, the land, and is selling. So when you have fulfilled these things, we get you your key,
But you do all these searches on my behalf.
We do all this on your behalf because we'll charge you fees to do all this on your behalf.
You're not going to put 12,000 CDs on my mortgage for doing all this?
No. I mean, the valuation is anywhere from 200 Ghana cedis to 350 Ghana cedi. Title search.
Can I put that on my mortgage, or I have to pay that up front?
You can put it on your mortgage if there's room.
Okay.
If there's room for it.
Okay.
For instance, if you qualify for 100,000 and you've only taken 60, it means that there's room for 40,000 that, some of these small fees can be added up. So that if there's room for it, yeah, you can put it on it. So after you have done all this, then we ask the developer to hand over the key to you, and then
you deal with the developer.
Then yes, we pay the developer. You start using the property for the next 20 years or 10 years.
Sounds good enough. Now, the cities everywhere are choked. Kumasi, Accra, Takoradi, I hear now there's a mad rush for it. I haven't been in the north properly, but I'm sure Tamale and everything have their fair share of problems being choked. Cities are where the businesses are. So every kid now finishes basic school. So you hop into the next trotro straight to Accra, Kumasi, and lands in the cities are finished.
Right.
So when we are going to solve housing problems, what then do we do?
Nana, the solution to the housing problems, I look at it. One, the first thing is that we need long-term funds. Long-term funds tend to be cheaper. So such long-term funds in the end give us lower rates. For instance, if we help in the development of domestic bond market, for HFC, for instance, we have issued bonds on the market and we use the bonds to fund our mortgages. It is also important to let listeners know that the new pension law, where we have 3 tiers. The first tier is the one that is managed by SNIT. That's about 13.5%. And then 5% of it goes to the second tier, which is managed by private. Then the third tier, which were normally our provident funds, is also managed privately. Now, the second and third tier can be used for mortgages. Okay. So all those who are contributing to the second and third tiers, these are something they need to look at very well, because the law indicates that those can be used for mortgages. In addition to that, I think that if government is able to address its housing policy, to provide incentives for those in the supply side, which is basically the developers, and then those in the demand side, which are borrowers, providing, subsidized land, tax exemptions, subsidizing for interest rate and things like that. It will really, really
But in
help.
the intro, it says that there are some subsidies and some, but the developers take it and then give it to those who don't need it rather than those who need it.
So the government has to come out and say who qualifies for this, for
only
these
properties
taxes
valued
at a certain price, because we don't have they haven't set up an affordable ratio, an affordable standard. An affordable standard should be one. Maybe we are looking at prices of 60,000 Ghana. Nobody should use 35% of his income to pay mortgages. If you set up those standards, then you say, look, developers, if you can give me decent houses within this price range, these are the things
I can have for you.
And I'm sure people will rush doing it. But at this moment, there are no standards, so they all go in rush and get it done.
The other thing, Charles, which I'm worried about is that because we've urbanized all major businesses, if affordable houses are going to come, they're going to go to somewhere like Pram and maybe really further out of Accra. So then you use 35% of your money in the rent, and then the other 80% on transport.
Take a tax.
You know, so
It's an urban issue, and is a problem across the world. In the cities, most people cannot afford houses in the cities, and therefore we are all pushed
out.
outside. That's the more reason why we need a government policy on housing, so that we look at all that transportation, subsidization, those kind of things. It's done very well in Europe and in America. So I don't see why it cannot be done here.
Tried and tested already.
All over the world, Australia, Asia, Europe, America. It's done all over the place.
Now, it might sound a silly question, but some of our houses are built out of clay or laterite. But some are, really good. I mean, if I found one and I was not your typical mud house, but I mean, it's built with laterite, and I want a mortgage to go and purchase it.
Yes, we've been trying to work with people who have been even producing bent bricks, but they can't produce in volume. They can't produce in volume. So we as a bank, HFC Bank, we as a bank also help Ghanaians who have come up with new technologies in building. It's something that we take it seriously. And any Ghanaian who has new ideas, new developments, new technologies in building or building materials, you should come and see us. We'll help. Because it's very dear to our heart. Because if we have these technologies, these building materials which are produced locally, then affordable housing also will see fruition in this country.
I drove last week, and I drove by Newtown and then Adabraka behind the market, and the number of people that were sleeping outside was scary. Now, I don't know if health and safety will allow it, but can you build like garage style accommodation where maybe it's not permanent, but you've come, to stay? So it's just a basic.
It boils down to policy. Because you see, rental housing is also important. Government should be able to come up with policies to provide incentives for investors who want to go into that area. Because there are no incentives. So no one will go in there. But if government comes out with just policies, incentives, that will guide investors. I can tell you investors, they will rush and do it.
I mean, as a bank, you meet people with housing need firsthand. What are the major ones for developers and the major ones for people, looking to buy? What are the major issues?
For developers, their greatest problem is land and high interest rates. Funding. For them, these are the three main issues. Land. Developers will tell you that they pay for land about 3 times the price. So it means that the cost of the property has already gone up by that. Then funding also is a problem. As I said, there's a lack of long-term funds, so they are not able to get cheaper sources. So for them, these are their main problems. For the customer, down payment is a problem. Okay. Then low income. And also lack of long-term funds, because if we have the long-term funds, as the our new pension law is beginning to address, then the cost of funding becomes cheaper, and therefore, when you come to us to borrow, the interest rate will be lower. And then we come up with products that you don't have to put down much down payment, little or none. That also will help. In that way, finally, government policy on housing, because there has to be incentives for investors to be able to invest in rental accommodation, to be able to provide affordable housing, to be able to provide needs for those in the low and middle income level.
And anything that HFC has got, in pipeline for customers before we round up?
Well, we have fantastic products, for, as I said, the private sector, public sector, we have one for them. And then for individuals, anybody, you can walk in. We have a product where we might not require you to make any down payment. We have product where you might make a minimum of 20%. It's for a maximum term of 20 years. And, you know, we also provide for expatriates.
Quickly, what if I lose my job? Because there's no protection for
Yeah,
job.
if you lose your job, you have to come to the bank and tell us you've lost your job so that we can restructure your loan and give you some time to.
So what would you do? Give me 6 months to find a job, a year to find a job?
Oh, we can give you 6 months, you know, to go out there and look for a job, and nobody will worry you. No, but the first thing you need to do is to come to the bank and tell us this is the problem you are facing. Now, if you don't come to the bank, then we'll come after you.
And it's default.
It's default. But you have to come to us, tell us this is the problem you are facing, and we'll be able to help you.
Charles, thank you very much. We're talking to Charles Bonsu, who's from HFC, General Manager, responsible for mortgages and consumer loans. It's been insightful, and I hope that, you know, I was able to address some of your concerns, mainly down payments, which we all don't have, and minimal monthly payments, which we all want, so that at least we can have some spare to continue a life. And hopefully I can get Charles back in so we can continue this conversation, because I know it's a topic dear to everyone's heart. My name is Nanan Sakwa. You're watching PM Express. Today is Corporate Wednesday. Tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. Thank you for watching.